I was in the middle of decorating a birthday cake for Mrs. Henderson's granddaughter when my phone started buzzing across the stainless steel counter. Buttercream roses covered my fingers, and I had 30 minutes before the pickup. I almost didn't answer. "Morgan, we need to talk." Mom's voice had that tight, clipped quality she got when she was about to deliver news she thought I wouldn't like. I wiped my hands on my apron, phone wedged between my shoulder and ear. "Can it wait? I'm swamped at the bakery. Your father and I have made a decision about the family money." My stomach dropped. We'd never talked openly about money growing up. It was one of those subjects that hovered in the background like smoke, never quite clearing but never addressed directly either. "We're giving Brandon $200,000 for his medical practice." The piping bag slipped from my other hand, blue gel icing splattering across the floor like a crime scene. 200. Mom, that's. He's opening a cardiology clinic in Scottsdale. It's a sound investment. Your father and I discussed it thoroughly. Her voice carried that matter-of-fact tone she used when she'd already made up her mind and wasn't interested in debate. Brandon's always been so driven, so focused. This is his moment. I stared at the half-finished cake, the cheerful pink roses suddenly looking ridiculous. "What about me?" The pause lasted 3 heartbeats too long. "Morgan, sweetheart, you're doing what you love. That's worth something." The way she said it, like she was patting a child on the head for trying their best even though they came in last place. "You have your little bakery. That's nice." Little bakery. 2 words that somehow contained her entire assessment of my life's work. "We just feel Brandon's opportunity has more potential. You understand, don't you?" I understood perfectly. I understood that my brother, golden, brilliant Brandon with his medical degree from Johns Hopkins and his perfect fiancé and his country club membership, was the child they'd actually bet on. I was the consolation prize, the one they smiled at politely at family dinners while waiting to talk about Brandon's achievements. "I have to go, Mom. The cake's not going to finish itself." "Don't be like that, Morgan. We love you both equally. This is just business sense." After we hung up, I stood there in my small bakery, the one I'd built from nothing, worked 70-hour weeks for, poured every penny of my savings into, and felt something inside me crack. Not break. Just crack, like a windshield that takes one too many hits and suddenly you're looking at the world through a spider web of damage. Mrs. Henderson picked up the cake 40 minutes late. She apologized profusely, didn't even notice the roses were slightly lopsided on one side. I smiled, took her payment, locked the door behind her, and finally let myself feel the full weight of what my mother had said. $200,000 for Brandon. That's nice for me. 3 weeks after the phone call, Dad texted, "Family dinner Sunday. 6 p.m. Your mother insists." I stared at that message for 2 days before responding. My thumb hovered over the keyboard at least 20 times, drafting and deleting responses. Everything from "I'll be there" to "go to hell" to "does Brandon need someone to clap for him while he counts his money?" Finally, I sent, "Fine." The house in Riverside looked exactly the same as it had my entire childhood, the same pristine white columns, the same manicured lawn that Dad spent every Saturday perfecting, the same everything. Brandon's BMW was already in the circular driveway. Of course he'd arrived early. Brandon was never late for anything, never unprepared, never anything less than exactly what our parents expected. Mom opened the door wearing her pearl necklace, the one she only wore for special occasions. My brother getting a small fortune qualified, apparently. "Morgan, you made it." She hugged me, and I caught the scent of her Chanel perfume. Same one she'd worn since I was 6. "You look tired, honey. Are you sleeping enough?" "I'm fine, Mom." Brandon stood in the living room, champagne flute in hand, looking like he'd stepped out of a catalog for successful young professionals. His fiancée, Amber, perched beside him in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Hey, sis." He pulled me into a one-armed hug, careful not to spill his drink. "Long time. How's the baking business?" The baking business. Not bakery. Business. Like I was selling cookies door to door. "It's going well." Dad emerged from his study, reading glasses hanging from a chain around his neck. "Morgan. Good. Everyone's here. Let's eat." Dinner was prime rib, Dad's specialty. He carved it at the table like he was performing surgery, precise and methodical. Mom served roasted vegetables and potatoes au gratin. Amber praised everything enthusiastically. Brandon talked about his plans for the clinic. "We're looking at a property on Camelback Road," he said, swirling his wine. 3,000 square feet. Room for 4 examination rooms, a procedure suite, waiting area with a coffee bar. A coffee bar. Mom clasped her hands together. "How lovely. Patients will appreciate that." "It's about creating an experience," Brandon continued. "Healthcare is moving toward concierge-style service. People expect more than just competent medical care, they want comfort, convenience, atmosphere." I pushed a piece of meat around my plate, not really hungry. "Morgan, you're quiet," Dad observed. "Something wrong?" Everything. Everything was wrong. But I said, "No. Just listening." "We're so proud of Brandon," Mom said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "This clinic is going to change lives. Real, important work." Real, important work. The words sat in the air like accusation marks. "And what about Morgan?" Amber asked brightly. Too brightly. Like she'd been coached. "How's your bakery doing?" All eyes turned to me. "It's fine. Just fine." Dad frowned. "You've been open for what, 3 years now?" 4. 4 years. And you're just fine." I set down my fork, the clatter louder than I intended. "What do you want me to say, Dad? That I'm making 6 figures? That I've expanded to 5 locations? That I'm a massive success story?" "Morgan," Mom started. "No, let's be honest here. You gave Brandon $200,000 because you believe in him. You believe his work matters. You believe he's going somewhere." "That's not fair," Brandon said quietly. "Isn't it?" I looked at him directly. "When did they ever offer to invest in my bakery? When I was maxing out credit cards to buy equipment? When I was working midnight to 8 in the morning for 6 months straight? Where was the family money then?" "Your bakery is different," Dad said. "Brandon's opening a medical practice. It's a profession. It's more important than what I do." "More stable," he corrected. "More legitimate." There it was. The word that had been hovering under everything. Legitimate. I left before dessert, some fancy tiramisu Mom had ordered from that Italian place downtown, because God forbid she serve something her daughter made. The drive back to my apartment in Mesa took 40 minutes, and I cried for 37 of them. Not pretty crying. Ugly, snotty, gasping crying that made my eyes swell and my chest ache. When I finally got home, I did something I'd never done before. I blocked their numbers. All of them. Mom, Dad, even Brandon, though he'd only texted me twice in the past year anyway, both times to ask if I could make a cake for someone he knew. Not to check in. Not to see how I was doing. Just to ask for favors. My phone immediately felt light in my hand, even though I knew that was ridiculous. Weight doesn't work that way. But somehow it did. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 23 text messages from various family members. Apparently, blocking your parents after walking out of dinner qualifies as a family emergency. "Aunt Linda, your mother is beside herself. Call her." "Cousin Kevin, dude, what happened? Everyone's freaking out." "Brandon, this is childish." "Morgan, call Mom back." I deleted every message without reading past the first line and went to work. The bakery opened at 7. I'd been there since 5, prepping dough, checking inventory, making sure everything was perfect. My assistant, Tanya, arrived at 6:30 with her usual thermos of coffee and questioning look. "You okay?" she asked, tying on her apron. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The look that says you either didn't sleep or you cried all night. Maybe both." Tanya had worked for me for 2 years. She was 19, studying business at community college, and had somehow become the closest thing I had to a real friend. Most people our age were out at bars on weekends. We were perfecting croissant recipes and arguing about whether almond or vanilla extract made better wedding cakes. "Family stuff," I said. She nodded knowingly. "Say no more. My mom's on my case about dropping out of university. Like, sorry I can't afford $40,000 a year, Mom. Some of us are working class." We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of baking soothing in the way only routine can be. Measure, mix, pour, bake, repeat. There was clarity in it. Unlike family dinners where nothing was clear and everything was loaded with subtext, baking was honest. You either followed the recipe or you didn't. The cake either rose or it didn't. No middle ground, no ambiguity. Around 9, the morning rush started. Regulars came in for their coffee and pastries. Mr. Dawson wanted his usual blueberry muffin. The construction crew from the site down the street ordered 24 assorted donuts. Mrs. Chen bought a loaf of sourdough and asked if I could make a retirement cake for her husband next month. Of course, I told her, pulling out my order book. What kind of design were you thinking? This was my life. These people. These orders. This small storefront with the crooked sign and the temperamental oven that ran hot on the left side. This was what my parents called not legitimate. 1 week became 2. 2 became a month. The calls stopped. The texts slowed to a trickle, then stopped entirely. Apparently, my family had decided if I wanted to be dramatic and cut them off, they'd let me. No one showed up at the bakery. No one drove to my apartment. They just let me go. Part of me had expected someone to fight for me. Mom to show up with apologies and explanations. Dad to demand I stop being ridiculous. Even Brandon to make some half-hearted attempt at sibling reconciliation. But there was nothing. The silence was worse than the fighting would have been. Work became my entire world. I threw myself into it with an intensity that probably wasn't healthy. New recipes, new marketing strategies, longer hours. Tanya started looking at me with concern. You know the bakery will still be here if you take a day off, right? She said one afternoon while we were cleaning up. I like working. There's liking work and then there's hiding in work. You're doing the second thing. I didn't answer, just kept scrubbing the already clean counter. My phone buzzed, not a blocked number, just a regular notification. But I still flinched every time, some part of me still expecting my family to reach out. They never did. Instead, it was an email from the Mesa Chamber of Commerce. They were hosting a small business showcase next month and wanted to know if I'd be interested in participating. Booth space, samples, networking opportunities. I stared at the email for a long time before responding yes. If my family didn't believe in what I was building, fine. Maybe other people would. The showcase preparation consumed the next 3 weeks. I designed business cards, planned sample menus, practiced my pitch. Tanya helped me put together a display board with photos of my best work, wedding cakes, specialty orders, the time I'd made a replica of the Arizona State Capitol building entirely out of gingerbread for a government fundraiser. This is actually impressive, Tanya said, stepping back to look at the board. Like, I work here and I forget sometimes how much cool stuff you've done. Thanks, I think. I'm serious. You should be proud of this. Proud. When was the last time I'd felt proud instead of defensive about my work? The night before the showcase, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that dinner, Mom's words, Dad's dismissiveness. More legitimate. What did that even mean? Brandon was going to be measuring blood pressure and prescribing statins. Important work, sure. But I fed people. I made birthday cakes that kids remembered for years. I created wedding cakes that became part of people's most important memories. Didn't that matter? At 2 a.m, I got out of bed and did something I'd been avoiding for weeks. I opened Facebook and looked at my family's pages. Brandon had posted about the clinic. There were renderings of the space, announcements about hiring staff, photos of him and Amber at some medical conference. 73 likes. 42 comments. Everyone congratulating him, celebrating his success. Mom had shared his posts. So proud of our son. Our son. Singular. I closed the app and threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall but didn't break, just one more thing that refused to shatter when I needed it to. The showcase changed something. I'd expected maybe a few interested people, some polite conversations, possibly 1 or 2 actual leads. What I got was a line at my booth that lasted the entire 4-hour event. People wanted to talk about custom cakes, special dietary accommodations, wholesale opportunities. A woman from the Chandler Arts Center asked if I'd be interested in providing desserts for their events. A wedding planner handed me her card and said she'd been looking for a reliable baker for months. A reporter from the East Valley Tribune asked if she could interview me for a piece on local entrepreneurs. This is insane, Tanya whispered, helping me hand out samples. We're going to run out of business cards. We did run out of business cards. And samples. By the end of the event, I had 36 new contacts and more opportunities than I could process. The Tribune article ran 2 weeks later. It was a small piece, nothing major, just a few paragraphs in the business section about local small business owners making it work despite economic challenges. But they'd taken a photo of me in the bakery, flour on my apron, smiling genuinely for maybe the first time in months. My phone exploded with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Old classmates, acquaintances, customers. Everyone suddenly wanted to congratulate me, share the article, tell me they'd always known I'd be successful. Everyone except my family. I checked. The article had been shared 4 to 7 times on Facebook. Not once by my parents or Brandon. That hurt worse than the silence had. But then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Chen, the woman who'd ordered her husband's retirement cake, came into the bakery with another woman I didn't recognize. Morgan, this is Catherine Brennan, Mrs. Chen said. She's a food critic for Phoenix Monthly. My heart stopped. Catherine smiled and extended her hand. I had your lemon lavender cupcake at the showcase. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it for 3 weeks. Phoenix Monthly did an annual feature on the best bakeries in the greater Phoenix area. Being included could change everything: foot traffic, legitimacy, recognition beyond the local community. I'd like to do a full review if you're interested, Catherine continued. Visit a few times, try various items, interview you about your process. The feature runs in August, so we'd need to move relatively quickly. I must have looked stunned because Mrs. Chen laughed. Say yes, dear. Don't just stand there. Yes. Absolutely yes. Catherine came by 3 times over the next 2 weeks, always unannounced, always ordering different items. I tried not to panic every time the door chimed, wondering if this was her, if this was the visit that would make or break everything. Tanya thought it was hilarious. You're going to give yourself an ulcer. Just bake like you always do. This could change everything. So could a lot of things. You can't control it. Just make good stuff and hope she has working taste buds. The article came out in early August. Catherine had written 1,200 words about my bakery. 1,200 words describing my techniques, my flavor profiles, my intuitive understanding of how to balance innovation with comfort. She called my chocolate espresso cake transcendent and my croissants worth the drive from anywhere in the valley. The review ended with, Sweet Ember Bakery isn't just another neighborhood spot, it's evidence that Phoenix's food scene is maturing beyond the expected. Morgan Fletcher is a talent we should all be watching. I read that last line 17 times. A talent we should all be watching. Not a failure. Not someone running a little bakery. A talent. Business tripled overnight. The Phoenix Monthly Review brought people from Scottsdale, Tempe, even as far as Tucson. I had to hire 2 more employees just to keep up with demand. The waiting list for custom cakes stretched to 6 weeks. A local coffee roaster approached me about a wholesale partnership. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and happier than I'd been in years. Then, 3 months after I'd blocked their numbers, my parents showed up at the bakery. I was in the back, arms deep in a bowl of bread dough, when Tanya knocked on the kitchen door. Morgan? Your parents are here. My hands stilled in the dough. What? Your parents. At least, I assume they're your parents based on the family resemblance and the way they're looking around like they own the place. I washed my hands slowly, deliberately, trying to calm my racing heart. Then I walked out front. They stood near the display case, Mom in a lavender blouse, Dad in khakis and a polo. They looked the same. Why had I expected them to look different? Morgan. Mom's smile was careful. Your bakery is lovely. So, busy. We saw the article, Dad added. In Phoenix Monthly. Very impressive. I crossed my arms. What are you doing here? Can't we visit our daughter? Mom's voice had that hurt quality she'd perfected over the years. You could have visited anytime in the past 4 months. You didn't. You blocked us, Dad said. What were we supposed to do? Maybe show up anyway? Maybe try harder than one dinner and then giving up? A customer nearby glanced over, pretending not to listen. I lowered my voice. If you want to talk, we can go to the back. We moved to the small office I used for paperwork and orders. The three of us barely fit. It smelled like vanilla and old receipts. We're sorry, Mom started. We didn't realize you were so upset about Brandon's money. It's not about the money. My voice came out sharper than I intended. It's about respect. It's about you treating my work like it's a hobby while treating everything Brandon does like it's sacred. That's not fair, Dad said. We've always supported you. Have you? When? When was the last time either of you asked about the bakery beyond polite small talk? When did you ever offer to help when I was struggling? You gave Brandon $200,000 without blinking, but you've never once asked if I needed anything. You never asked for help, Mom said quietly. I shouldn't have to ask. You're my parents. The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. We're proud of you, Morgan. The article, this place, it's more than we realized. More than you realized, I repeated. So you're proud now that a magazine said I'm good? You needed outside validation to believe in me. Neither of them answered. Brandon's opening his clinic next month, Mom said, changing the subject. We're having a celebration party. We'd like you to come. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You came here to invite me to celebrate Brandon's success? That's what this is about. We came to apologize, Dad insisted. No. You came because ignoring me started to look bad after the article. You came because now other people think I'm successful, so maybe you should pretend you supported me all along. Morgan, that's not. It's exactly that. Get out. Mom's eyes widened. Excuse me. Get out of my bakery. You don't get to show up after months of silence and pretend everything's fine because it's suddenly convenient for you. They left. Mom's eyes were wet. Dad looked angry. I didn't care. Tanya appeared in the doorway. You okay, boss? I will be. And slowly, I was. The bakery continued to grow. By November, I was looking at a second location in Tempe. By December, I'd hired a business manager to handle operations so I could focus on creative development. By January, exactly 1 year after my parents had called me to announce Brandon's windfall, I had 6 employees and was profitably serving 3 counties. Brandon's clinic opened as planned. I saw the photos on Facebook, ribbon cutting, champagne, Mom and Dad beaming in the background. I didn't feel the stab of jealousy I'd expected. Just nothing. They tried calling a few times. I didn't answer. Eventually, they stopped trying. Aunt Linda reached out once, asking if I'd consider reconciling. They're your parents, she wrote. Family is family. But family is supposed to mean something beyond blood. It's supposed to mean support, belief, showing up when it matters. My family had shown me exactly what I meant to them, and it wasn't enough to bring me back. 2 years after that dinner, Sweet Ember Bakery had 3 locations and 22 employees. I'd been featured in Bon Appetit, the Arizona Republic, and a Food Network web series about rising pastry chefs in the Southwest. A production company reached out about a possible reality show. Nothing was certain, but they were interested in my story. Young entrepreneur builds business from nothing, overcomes family doubt, achieves success through pure determination. They wanted to interview my parents. Hard no, I told the producer. But the family tension adds drama. It's compelling. It's my life, not drama. Find your compelling somewhere else. My phone rang that night. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Morgan. Brandon's voice. Don't hang up. I waited. I saw you're opening a 4th location. In Sedona. That's really something. Did you want something, Brandon? He sighed. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For not standing up for you. For letting them dismiss what you do. For being part of the problem. Okay. I know it doesn't fix anything. I needed you to know I see it now. What you built. It's remarkable. Thanks. My voice came out flat. I didn't have the energy for this anymore. Not the anger, not the hurt, not the hope that maybe things could be different. Mom asks about you. Dad won't admit it, but I think he regrets how things went. That's not my problem to solve, Brandon. I know. I just thought. He trailed off. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. Was I happy? I thought about my bakery, my team, the customers who drove across the state for my cakes. I thought about the creative freedom, the independence, the satisfaction of building something entirely my own. Yeah, I said. I really am. Good. That's good. We hung up. I never heard from him again. 3 years later, Sweet Ember Bakery had 7 locations. I'd published a cookbook. I'd been invited to judge a baking competition show. And I'd learned that sometimes the family that matters most is the one you build yourself. The employees who became friends, the customers who became supporters, the community that showed up when blood relatives didn't. I never reconciled with my parents. Some people say that's sad. That I should forgive, move on, let them back in. But I built an empire they said wasn't legitimate. I became successful doing the thing they dismissed. And I did it without their money, without their support, without their belief. That's not sad. That's proof that their approval was never what I needed in the first place.